Hi, welcome to Retrospective. This week we're going to be discussing Mario Party and the decline of couch co-op over the years. I'm Lucas Gubala, joined by my guest.
Hi, I'm Ronnie McPherson.
Hi, and welcome to Retrospective. Hi, so we're going to be going over Mario Party and kind of how couch co-op has changed a little bit over the years. And Ronnie, why don't you tell me about Mario Party and kind of what it's all about?
Right. So for Mario Party, for those of you who don't know, it was a game that came out originally on the N64 and had pretty yearly releases for a while. But it's a 4-player cooperative kind of game. It's, head-to-head. And basically players have a set objective, whether to get the objective has changed over the years. But it's a turn-based game, and there's lots of mini-games, and the mechanics have changed over the years. But it was quite a revolutionary game.
Yeah, and it's perfect for displaying your dominance over all of your friends, just to show that you're the ultimate gamer. Well, I personally have a lot of experience with Mario Party. I know you do as well, playing it with many people, up to 4. As you said, the mechanics have kind of changed over the years, but it's, in my mind, and I think a lot of other people's, always kind of been regarded as the gold standard of like cooperative gaming, couch-wise anyway, sitting next to your buds.
Yeah, definitely. And it was I think part of the reason why is that it was just so easy to pick up. Is that
the controls are incredibly intuitive for anybody that wants to pick them up, and before every mini game there's a screen that lets you know exactly how you're going to be interacting with the environment and what controls you're going to need to be using.
So yeah, you didn't need a lot of prior knowledge. There wasn't a big story. And usually you can get through a full game if you change the settings. You can get through a full game in about an hour or so.
Yeah, it's very well paced, and I think that it's lent itself very well to being accessible for new players. I completely agree.
Right.
So Mario Party was fun for all sorts of different people, and everybody was able to play it and pick it up on their first time. But as a history of a franchise, how long were they kind of going for?
So the first game came out in 1998, had pretty close to yearly installments up until 2007, which is kind of the uproar in online gaming.
Yeah, services like Xbox Live began to hit their stride, and people really started to interact more over the internet, gaming-wise, and couch co-op kind of fell by the wayside, if I do say so myself.
Yeah, definitely.
Personally, I was gaming much less with my friends on the couch and going through games alone, where I could go home and I could play games like Halo online with them and do that for hours and hours on end.
Yeah. Yeah, probably like an embarrassingly long time. But
yeah, but so couch co-op kind of began a slow decline during these years, from like around 2007 to like, I would say probably like 2016 when things started to pick back up.
Yeah, a lot of I'd say small indie developers, when Steam and things like that came out, and the release of the Wii U also had a lot to do with it kind of coming back.
I would think that the rise in kind of indie games and how they became more prevalent on consoles, how Xbox and Sony, they both kind of embraced indie games a bit more and leaned into that development process. And you saw a lot more games tailored towards, parties and like groups of people getting together. And you saw games like Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, which kind of integrated like VR. So if you had a VR headset, you could use it in a way that was unique and was a really cool experience, and it let you interact like one-on-one, and you could take turns and like pass it off to other people.
Yeah, and then as that game kind of increased in difficulty, it became a lot easier to play and a lot more fun to have a larger group of people with you to help you out with that.
Oh yeah, and because the harder it got, you had these. For those of you that don't know, Keep Talking Nobody Explodes was a VR game where you were tasked with disarming a bomb, and one person would be in VR holding the bomb, and the other person would be holding a manual, and they would need to communicate and talk about how many shapes do you see, or like what wire should I cut, stuff like that. And it was super easy to integrate more people on the manual side trying to gather information like that. And I've seen videos of people with the manual pages up on the wall and 3 or 4 people trying to communicate that data. And scaling up like that is kind of like a board game where like you can play charades and have like teams of 2, or you could like scale it up and have teams of 3. Or you could take a game like Cards Against Humanity and put your own rules on it. And once you start making games like that, I think it lends itself really well for that kind of party atmosphere.
Yeah, and other games like that. I think you mentioned. What other games did you mention?
Well, we talked a little bit about Jackbox Party Pack, who I know we are both big fans of.
Oh yeah,
yeah. You can pull that out at a party. And hopefully it goes well. Sometimes people don't take raunchy answers too well, and that's usually how where it trends. But Jackbox Party Pack is kind of designed and to be a party game. Absolutely, I don't think there's any doubt about that. There are people have made fabulous use of it on streams with large audiences, and that's exactly what I'm talking about, because it's a game designed for 8 players, right?
Yeah, it's between like 4 to 8, I think.
But you have that feature of the audience where you can scale it up as large as you want. I've seen games of Jackbox with 2,000 people in the audience, all giving their input into the equation, and everybody's kind of getting their own jokes in and enjoying their time individually. And it doesn't matter how many people there are, and that's a great scale up. And having that scalability, I think, is part of what makes a really good party game. Because with Mario Party, you could play mini games, and you could pass off every mini game, or you could play short rounds of 10-round games, and having people be able to like pass it off and quickly switch in and out is super important. And you see that in a lot of games nowadays that are shorter rounds that you can kind of play quickly and pass off with a lot of friends. And while they may not be directly couch co-op games, they do lend themselves very well for that.
Right. And a lot of, like using Jackbox as another example, is that kind of the question submission sort of games that there are. And then there's also, I know in Jackbox 3, I forget the name of it, but it involves a lot of player-to-player communication, just straight looking at each other and interacting with each other in the real world, and that can interfere with the actual gameplay.
I believe the game that you're talking about is Faking It.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Which we've played, and while it requires some level of knowledge about the people that you're playing with, it's also great to like kind of get to know people as like a mixer, because there's 2 people that are friends and 2 people that are friends, and people are pointing at each other. And for those of you that don't know how the game works, it'll say point to the person that has eaten the most pizza this week, and you will point at the person that you think is eating the most pizza. And there is one person who is a spy, and they do not get that prompt. So they're trying to kind of blend in. And there's 4 or 5 different games kind of like that, one where you hold up fingers for a certain number according to these prompts. And it's great to get to know people. And I think that is a hallmark of a good couch co-op games, because over the years Mario Party was fun because it's not necessarily about the game, it's about kind of like the competition and the friendly ribbing between friends, unlike kind of like story games where some people enjoy to experience them alone, some people like to do them in groups. You actually you do something that I think is really cool with Telltale games. What is that?
Oh yeah, so in Telltale games is it's a very storybook kind of game. It kind of Telltale is the biggest company that makes these sort of games. There's some other companies that have branched off and done their own series, which have been very successful, like Until Dawn or Life is Strange. But it's kind of based on that point-and-click adventure, or you pick your own story side of the thing, where it's a story game. It's it is 100% about the story, pretty much, and you have different options which can branch out into different outcomes, and you can be really nice to everybody that you meet, or you can be really mean to everybody that you meet, and that'll affect the certain big events that happen in the game. And something
these Telltale games are episodic as well, so your choices kind of carry over over a period of usually 5 episodes of these games. So like making these choices is really fun because you get to see the repercussions of like what comes of them.
Mm-hmm. And something I've been doing over the last couple of years is obviously playing the games by myself, because I believe that there's a strong value in having your own story for your own things, and then also sort of a couch co-op sort of thing where you bring that story to everybody, and each person could play an episode, and each person it's like watching a big movie together, and you get to kind of decide the story, which is interesting.
Yeah, games are an interactive media in a way that like movies aren't. So being able to experience kind of like a movie with your friends in a way that they're able to make choices, and you can all kind of joke about it. You develop a love for the characters together, and
right.
I think it's really cool. Talking about kind of a shift from a new age couch co-op game to something that's much more, I would say, traditional in the vein of Contra and like bullet hell games is Cuphead, which recently was incredibly popular.
Jeez, yeah.
It made waves for its super unique art style and really tight controls. But I think people found that they really enjoyed playing it with friends as well as playing it alone. Because you can play like bullet hell games alone, and that's a special kind of torture that you have to be a special kind of person to enjoy.
Right.
But playing them with a friend and kind of overcoming those obstacles, I can find an enjoyment in that. As for somebody who I personally don't like the ridiculously challenging style of games very much, I'm not like a Dark Souls fan. And a lot of people call Cuphead the Dark Souls of 2D shoot 'em ups. I don't quite the saying. So it appealed to me in that way, that I had much more fun playing it with a friend. And I know everybody's not like that. A lot of people enjoy the experience of playing a difficult game like that on their own. But I think a game that gives you that option and fleshes it out as much as Cuphead, and instead of just playing, like a color shifted character of your, like in Contra. I mean, there's a backstory to Contra, but but you're playing like your Cuphead, and then you're Mugman, and your brothers, and you're part of the story, and kind of it makes everybody feel kind of included in the experience, and you're sharing a story less than being like tacked on, and that's like. As an example of kind of like co-op that is done in a way that I feel isn't like super satisfactory, Super Mario Galaxy. I remember when I was I played that with my brother, and he was like, we'll play co-op, and the co-op was I got to point a Wiimote at the screen and like shoot star bits, and that was about it. Yeah, and it wasn't satisfying in a way that taking down big old dragons is in Cuphead.
Yeah, I think games like Mario Galaxy and then recently Mario Odyssey had a very similar thing where it's just a secondary mechanic that it's not essential, and that a cooperative game is that both people have an equal contribution to achieving the objective, and that it was just kind of tossed in to sort of give people that cooperative feel, that
the little brother experience, where like
it was absolutely a little brother experience.
And to throw it back, having equal contribution, as you said, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to be doing the same thing. Talking about a game that we discussed earlier, what is it? Nobody Explodes. Keep Talking, Nobody Explodes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the completely different styles. One of them is pattern recognition, and one of them is, there's an element of skill. You're in VR, you're in a new environment, but at the core of it, it's communication. I think that's what really makes a couch co-op game special, is when you're communicating. And like we said with Mario Party, communicating your anger about losing. Yeah. Or with a game like Cuphead, communicating your frustration about that boss that's just crazy ridiculous. And Jackbox, communicating your love for dirty, raunchy jokes that other people don't find funny. Well,
Yeah.
another thing that has kind of impacted gaming cooperatively in a way, at least for me, and I think for a lot of other people, is the Nintendo Switch.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which has been a huge boon for cooperative gaming, having a platform that is so portable.
It really has blurred the line between a portable console and a home console, because it is in fact both.
Yeah, it's when they said they were going to be doing something that gaming has never seen before, and a lot of people were skeptical of that, but they pulled it off. They definitely pulled it off, because everybody I know that likes games got a Switch, and if they didn't get one, they want to get one and plan to. And having such a large player base, I went to a gathering last night where I brought my Switch and we sat down, and my buddy had a Switch too, and he had a dock connected to his TV, so we plopped it in. We all played Bomberman. We could connect all of our Wiimotes together, not Wiimotes, Switch Joy-Cons.
Right.
Patent probably not pending, probably done.
Yeah.
But we just sat down, connected, and it was no fuss. We could just sit down and all play the game together, and we weren't worrying about being on an online network like when you play games like Call of Duty now. I used to sit down and play Call of Duty for hours on end, but I wasn't playing split screen. I was playing on another TV, sitting next to somebody else on another TV, using 2 internet connections on 2 different Xboxes.
Right.
But when you can kind of unify together and play a game on the Switch, I think it leads to that communication. I think it's a lot better. A game that I know we have both played, but I think you have more experience with, that has been very popular on the Switch, is called Overcooked. Why don't you tell me about your experience with that?
Overcooked. I, in fact, haven't played it on the Switch. I only played it on Steam, because I think it got released on most consoles. But I played it just a hair. And basically, it has a lot. It's entirely based on communications. It's a cooking game. It's not as boring as it sounds, but it's a cooking game. You have a set dish you have to make, and there's lots of silly obstacles that can get in the way. And it's a sandbox map, so to speak, where you have just a square, and then you have your cooking station, your cleaning station, your serving and assembly station. You have all these different things to get in your way, and it just puts you in there, puts the players in there, and you have to communicate and say, okay, I'm gonna chop the vegetables, you start cooking the things, you clean, and it doesn't assign the players anything. That's what I don't know if sandbox is the right word, but it throws the players in there with the open options, and so therefore the players communicate and have to come up with a game plan themselves, which is really fun.
Throws them right in, and they have to take the heat or get out of the kitchen.
Yeah. Is that the motto?
It should be. It definitely should be.
Definitely.
No, I agree, and we're talking about a lot of really good co-op experiences, but they stand out because they're kind of diamonds in the rough. I think co-op gaming over the years has definitely taken a fall, as we kind of said at the top. It's been in a decline, and I personally think it was largely in part due to the advent of online gaming, and so many developers putting so much of a focus on that.
Right.
And I've run into many situations where I want to play games with my friends, but there's no there's no LAN play, there's no local area network play, or you want to get together, but like it's just going to be such a hassle that it's so much easier to just play online with each other. Yeah. And I am a firm believer that playing games online with your friends can be valuable social time, unlike all the parents out there. They're like, oh, you can't possibly be talking to people over the interwebs. But I think it's valuable social time. But there is something to be said about being in person and connecting. And when somebody steals your star from you, you can take a candy and like eat a piece of candy and squash them with a thwomp or whatever you want. There's something to be said about that in person connection.
Right.
And I think was undervalued for a while, and it kind of showed that maybe developers weren't really sure what the spirit of the games that they were making, because there were a lot of games that were really fun and had the potential to be really good party games that were being made, that they just didn't focus on that. And I think that period ran from probably like 2012 to 2016.
Yeah.
When we did see that resurgence of indie games, and a lot of the games that we're talking about kind of started coming up in development. Cuphead was in development for a really long time because of its art style, but games like Keep Talking Nobody Explodes, which was obviously enabled because of virtual reality, Overcooked, Jackbox, caught on. Another game that came out with the Switch in 2017 that I personally loved and thought was adorable was called Snipper Clips.
Oh, goodness, yes. Oh, God.
And puzzle solving with your friends in just in a great way with an adorable art style and a fantastic mechanic. I think there are so many more indie games that are catching on to what I think really makes cooperative gaming fun. And like we had said, I personally think it's that communication, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And I think kind of touching on an earlier point that you had with like online versus in person sort of cooperative games is something that we used to do is play a lot of Halo 2. And it had that LAN connection, and where it had a max of 16 player parties and it was really easy to jump online. Halo 2 was probably the big stone of console online gaming, is like what really started, I think.
Yeah, I could potentially see that. It definitely launched. I remember when the server shut down and there was still a party of 8 people like clinging. They couldn't kick them off. That's how impactful Halo 2 was to online gaming.
Mm-hmm. And so, you could hop online, get a party of 16 people, and you could have the Xbox Live chat, which is really, really fun. And something that we used to do for a few years is we've got this big room with a lot of TVs, and through Craigslist, we got a lot of consoles together. And we would have a whole day of 16 people coming over all in the same room and playing those big, sweaty room games.
Oh, yes. And he says sweaty room. Believe him. It was not a large room. And, and it wasn't always 16 people. Sometimes we would get upwards of 20 people, I'd say, where people were sitting out waiting to come in and play on the nights where everybody really came out.
Mm-hmm. And while both of those settings, online or in-person LAN connections, are incredibly fun, they're incredibly different, had very, very different dynamics to them.
Yeah, there's different feels because you're putting in custom names and you're like, oh, who's Poon Slayer 69 across the room who got me in the back, and you just hear a voice across the room and you're yelling at each other, and it's a great experience. But I totally agree, it's different from online play, and I think that's something that developers took a while to realize, because you see games like Mario Galaxy where cooperative is kind of tacked on, but human connection has such potential to enhance a game in amazing ways, because human connection is part of why we play games, and not taking advantage of that, I think, is just foolish.
Yeah. If they're, and to each his own. A lot of people have people come to gaming for different purposes, and for the social dynamics of online and in couch co-op, they're very different. And I think when the rise of online gaming came, everybody hopped on board. It was such a revolution, and couch co-op kind of got forgotten. And as we saw, like you said, with Galaxy and other smaller games that came out, like, I don't know, Skate or Guitar Hero, some games like that. But they weren't as mainstream as Halos, the Call of Duties, the bigger things like that.
Yeah, the new hotness of gaming was online play.
And now,
and I think there are certainly games that's perform better in that format. I don't think you should do what I did and get in a huddled basement and play Call of Duty on 2 separate screens for 48 hours or some ungodly amount of time, because I think it's better when you play it online with your friends, because getting together to play Call of Duty, it's just such a focused game.
Right.
That I think some games definitely lend themselves better, and you're right to each their own about the choice, because there are also games that I think should definitely be enjoyed alone. I've played, for example, like Journey. I would never play Journey alone. It's such a personal experience.
Mm-hmm. And then games like Abzu or I'd say Undertale for a lot of people, or a lot of those story-driven games, like the Telltale thing I was talking about earlier. It's not a super popular thing, I think, for a pretty good reason.
Yeah, a lot of people enjoy taking a story at their own pace and taking like a good book.
Yeah,
and so I totally understand that. I have times when I do that myself, and this is by no means meant to tear down single player gaming. This is just talking about kind of the history of cooperative gaming and how it kind of got left in the dust a little bit.
But I think what we did see is in the recent years of 2012 to 2016, when a lot of indie developers came out, it was really difficult to kind of have that AAA feel and make a big online game that everybody could hop on. So a lot of focus did go to those couch co-op things that were designed.
We've been in such a slump of games that with yearly releases of games like Call of Duty or like Battlefield was coming out with a rendition. I remember when Battlefield came out with a game that was just like a reskin of Battlefield 3. Was it Hardline? It was
I want to say so.
People were so sick of just the same monotonous kind of large multiplayer experiences that I think you're right. I think these indie games kind of were they were a cool glass of water to an industry that had been so focused on what they thought was the best way to make games. And I think people showed with their wallets that these indie releases that could be fun at parties were what people wanted in some aspect. And it's not that they don't want both. There's still plenty of people that play Battlefield 4, I know. And there are tons of people that play online shooter games and online, like the new Assassin's Creed. While they innovate to some extent, the formula stays the same, but that's what some people want. But taking away the choice from the consumer is not a good option in this industry, I would say. Or at least it doesn't necessarily lead to fans being as happy as they could be. Another series that I know we've both enjoyed to some extent is the Splinter Cell series.
Yeah, definitely.
And the cooperative mode with that, and that's an example of a game that has kind of fallen out in the middle. It falls somewhere in there because the multiplayer experience was kind of, a lot of people knew it to be just super fun, and it was very popular, but so was the storyline. And for the games that kind of fell somewhere in the middle, a lot of them kind of went by the wayside because the quickest way to make money, go to one extreme and assume that you'll cater to an audience. But I think developing a balance between the two of those, I think is important.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it looks like we're nearing the close here of Retrospective. Thank you for joining us. I have been Lucas Gubala.
I've been Ronnie McPherson.
And we'll catch you next time.
Thank you.